What is going on, everybody? Yet another bananas days in this NFL free agency. We're getting no time off to do anything that we want to. I mean, not that we don't want to discuss this, but we've had like ideas like, hey, why don't we do this for the show? Hey, why don't we do this? And then, Tyreek Hill gets traded. So abandoned ship and completely change the narrative of what we're going to do and start talking about another crazy trade. Oh, and Devante Adams got traded. And so how's your head doing with all this, Eric? Because it's like trying to follow this all day is just it's a 24/7 job now.
It's crazy, dude. This is supposed to be, everybody jokes as the season winds down or right after the season, you put out a little bit of like recap of the 2021 season, all that fun jazz that everybody does, right? Same thing as like Silas. On every YouTube video, you have to say like and subscribe. Same thing after the football season. People are like, okay, I'm going to take a break, right? This is my downtime or whatever. There has been zero downtime. None. This is definitely, maybe ever. My guess is this is the craziest offseason ever, certainly of my lifetime since I've been following football. It's like every other day, a total bombshell drops. And so the hardest thing for me is like, so I went on the Sports Grid show with Davis earlier, and this was what made it hit home. It was like, did you remember that Brian Flores sued the NFL? Like, it was like, a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago or something. That was like, that would be like the craziest story in an NFL offseason that we'd be talking about forever in a normal offseason. And that feels like, I don't know, years ago now.
That was our first show. So our first show was Flores, Brady retiring, and I don't know, there was like a third topic, but it was Flores and Brady retiring. And I would assume we did that show 6 years ago.
I didn't even remember it. Where it's not even that long ago, and I didn't even remember it.
I had to give my Brady eulogy, like we talked about Flores, and it might as well have been 6 years ago because Brady's not retired anymore. Flores is the linebackers coach in Pittsburgh. Everything is just crazy. It's just crazy, and then all these other things that have happened. The Deshaun Watson stuff, the Amari Cooper, like. We're going to go through all of it, but it's like, dude, I mean, spoiler alert, I behind the curtain peak is I work a normal job. So like I'm trying to work a normal job and follow NFL news. And you'll just see me write what a lot because I can't even begin to process what I'm reading as I'm working and trying to figure out like what is happening. Like, no one even had a sniff that Tyreek was about to get traded. Like that's the craziest part.
Yep.
Like everyone's like reacting to it, but it's like we didn't know 4 hours ago or whatever it was. Like right before Schefter tweeted about it, and then within an hour he's traded, and we're just like, when the hell was this even being discussed? Why didn't we know about this? How is this not getting leaked? It's Tyreek Hill. So it is so tough to keep up with right now.
Yeah, this was a part of the news cycle. The whole world was triggered, right? Because the whole Patriots nation was triggered because Brady didn't say, like, that was a big story then. Now I didn't even remember that happened, right? Until Silas just said it. It's nuts. But from like, our perspective, like perspective of the show, perspective of Spike Week, I think it's legitimately hard, and it's definitely been difficult for me to there's a compounding effect, a cascading effect, whatever you want to call it, to all this. It's like one thing happens and you try to start to adjust, whether it's your rankings or whatever, your draft strategy, blah, blah, blah. But every 2 days, it's like a total bombshell. These aren't like small moves. No. These are like NFL shattering moves every few days. And so it's really hard, I think, to like, I haven't updated the rankings. I kind of just like took a step back, and I'm really happy that I did, because hopefully,
Good.
fingers crossed, now I can actually go in and do an update that doesn't get totally ruined by a new news item. But it's very
Well,
difficult.
you would have thought that after the Adams trade, because you
Yeah.
would have been like, okay, well, that's got to be it, right? Like that had to be the last domino to fall. And if you had updated yesterday, you would have felt great about you would have felt real good about your updates. And then Tyreek would have hit, and then you would have been like, well, what, dude, what? And come on, give me a bone here. Like, let me have like 2 days apiece. And but it's great. It's great to talk about. It's great to see that teams are, I think it shows that teams are adjusting. Maybe for worse, it's for better or worse, but they're adjusting to the salary cap and the way that these rookie contracts are structured, and when they should be going for it and when they shouldn't be going for it.
Yeah, that is definitely true. And you have, maybe it is, I don't like to give the NFL too many props, but maybe it is a little bit of, expanding the NFL playoffs, getting us more teams. I mean, I guess maybe the Dolphins might have done this many years ago, but the more playoff teams you add, it just gives these mediocre teams incentive to go for it. And the Dolphins have some other incentives, I think, with the young quarterback nearing the end of his rookie deal and that kind of stuff to go for it. But I don't know. I don't know if many years ago that we would have had these teams like love to live in mediocrity and just pick 14th in the draft every year. And so I think that's a nice perk of where we're at in the NFL right now. And some of these teams, like what the Seahawks and those are probably just going to toil away at the bottom for a long, long time now, given the state of the NFL. But hopefully this is like a sign of things moving forward. Like you said, that teams are willing to, right? So like next year and the year after, we're going to have the Trey Lances and the Justin Fields of the world. Those teams should be going for it, basically, if those guys are any good, right? Malik Willis. If Malik Willis is good and he's on whatever team, it's wheels up. It's time to do what some of these teams are doing. And on the flip side, if you're the Rams, Davis and I talked about it. People don't think about it this much because we live in the moment, but like soon the Bills are going to have to really strongly consider something like the Chiefs just did, with Stephon Diggs and the Allen extension kicking in and all that fun stuff. And so I do think we're in a pretty fun time of the NFL offseason, which means for us, the fantasy football draft season is amazing. Like, dude, you tell me how you rank all these. Like, it's half the player pool is on new teams or has new quarterbacks or new coaches, or like last year it was like what Kenny Galladay was the guy that moved, and you were like, who really gives a shit? I was the only guy drafting Giants and Jets last year, but this year, exactly. This year we saw. I luckily didn't draft that much Galladay, but I did have a lot of Giants. But this year it creates a lot more fun because everybody's always so fucking certain about everything in fantasy football. Everybody has the answers to the test, right? And I can assure you, no one has any answers to any of this shit right now. Like none of it. Not even like who the 101 is.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that makes it a lot more fun for us, for sure.
So for me, before we get into this list, the one thing that I did check after this trade is just to show some of that juxtaposition that you're talking about is the first big board that was done. I wanted to check my Tua ownership. What do you think I have at Tua exposure in that first big board?
In the regular non-super flex.
The non-super flex one.
I'm just going to say 20%. Zero.
A big 0% in the original big board. Now, looking at my super flex, he was my second highest owned quarterback in super flex. He's at like 45% or something on my teams because of where I was getting him as my second quarterback. He was like that. He was like the last guy almost, like close to it. So I was like, I'll just take Tua as my second quarterback at this point. Like that's all I'm looking for here. And so it's just funny to see, like, because now it would never happen that way. I don't think.
No.
So yeah, it's just show just what you're talking about, how like everything's ever evolving and just like changing on the fly day to day. And now it's like, well, what stacks do I actually have in some of this stuff? And you just have no idea. I might have, like, I didn't look through my Tua teams, but I might have some crazy Waddle, Hill, Tua, Gesicki super stacked Miami team that I don't even know that I have at the moment.
And
So
maybe Mostert late, right? You just
might
get all,
have Mostert late.
Edmonds, you don't even know because all their offense is new besides obviously the two guys that were there last year.
Right. The one thing that I will hit on, well, actually, we'll talk about it because we're going to get into this board right now.
Do you want me to pull it up?
Yeah, let's pull up the board. And let's just start talking about it. So basically what we're doing is we're going to rank a lot of these teams that had big free agency moves. I've already went through and I've ranked some of them. I just thrown a lot of them in the middle because they didn't really do much. Teams like San Francisco, Houston didn't do much. Washington, they re-signed McKissick, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sucks for Gibson theoretically, but I don't think it does too much. So just teams like that. So you can see him on the board. Just for the audio listeners, I already ranked Denver as a rocket ship. That's the best tier. Excellent signing with only one or two concerns is the Bengals. I put them in because they just signed offensive linemen, which is exactly what they needed. There's nothing flashy about them. The mid tier, I put San Fran, Philly, Minnesota, Detroit, Baltimore, Houston, Washington, Arizona, the Giants, the Jets, the Bears, the Saints because the Saints couldn't do anything, and the Patriots because they haven't signed another 5 running backs yet. So that's the middle tier. And then there's the don't really understand these moves, but it could work. And then there is just the what are we doing tier, where we just don't understand what these teams are doing at all. So we haven't put any in those 2 bottom ones yet, but I'm sure we're going to be doing that rather quickly with some of these teams that are left. Anything that you see there that you would like to change before we move?
No, I am going to bring up a slight deviation from exactly what you said that Tony brings up. Like he brings up Baker basically. Before we dive in, can we talk a little bit about just a couple of impact free agents or I guess Baker, not a free agent, but kind of a free agent that maybe, will get brought up in this conversation. But basically, there's only a couple of quarterback needy teams. You obviously have the draft coming up, but you really just have Baker and Jimmy left as quarterback targets if somebody wants to get one of these veterans. And then it's really just Will Fuller, right, left, I think, from like a truly impact level free agent signing. Mm-hmm. Melvin Gordon, I guess, but I don't really care about the running backs. Like from an actual impact on the football field, I think Will Fuller and those two quarterbacks. So do you have any like takes on that? Because the Baker situation is another one. Where the fuck did that come from? I mean, I guess we could have seen Baker not being their quarterback, but then like just a total falling out and him asking out and nobody wanting him, even though everybody needs a quarterback. Just bizarre.
He's gonna wind up in Seattle for like a 3rd round pick. That's where Baker's gonna go, and Jimmy's gonna get traded to Carolina for probably a 3rd round pick or something like that. So that's where they're gonna go. It's just, who cares is my kind of consensus point on that. Maybe it's okay for DJ Moore. I don't think it's great. I think it might be okay for CMC. I think Baker going to Seattle, if it happens, hurts DK Metcalf, because I'd rather just have Drew Lock there winging it because that's what he likes to do. So I'd rather Drew Lock go full Jameis Winston. Not that they'll allow him to throw the ball that much, but I can't see Baker really ending up anywhere else unless he's willing to take a backup job, and I can't imagine that's the case either. So
that's it, right? Those are the only 2 quarterback jobs. I guess technically Pittsburgh and Atlanta would not be open, but Baker's not a realistic landing spot for Atlanta. I guess there was a little buzz of him to Pittsburgh, but that doesn't make a ton of sense. To me, I would be very surprised to see him land in Pittsburgh, but I think one of those guys might end in Seattle, but your guess is as good as mine on what they're doing. They're talking about a Geno and Drew Lock quarterback competition. That would be one guy throws a pick, we put the other guy in, and I don't really have a strong take on any of the quarterbacks here, but I just thought it was at least noteworthy to bring up.
the music ended in musical chairs, and there wasn't a seat left for Seattle and Carolina. Basically, is what happened.
Yep.
So
which is so
now,
fucking sad for Carolina, because if they just could have got one of these guys, I mean, even if it was like Mitch, even if it was Wentz, I don't even like these guys. They're not like they're bottom end of the 32 starting NFL quarterbacks. But if they could have at least just got one of these guys that can complete a forward pass to DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and CMC, those guys would have been awesome, like way better than they have been for the last DJ Moore's entire career. They would have been better. But who the hell knows? I mean, I guess it's going to be Darnold and maybe a rookie or something, and that's just a rookie that's not Malik Willis.
Yeah, you saw the report that the Carolina and Bakers, that they have mutual disinterest in each other.
What a phenomenal word choice! That is incredible.
Like, that's basically like, so my tweet about that was, it's like, yeah, so me and Megan Fox have mutual disinterest in dating each other, because it's like Baker only has disinterest in them because they said they weren't interested in him. That's all it was. Yes. If they traded for him, he would go play for them. Absolutely. If Megan Fox knocked on my door, it was like, hey, let's go get dinner, I'm going to say no. Like, what? Like, I mean, come on. That's basically what it is. It's not mutual disinterest. It's Carolina's like, nah, we don't want Baker. Baker's like, yeah, well, I wasn't going there anyways, bros. Like,
it's the guy that you get fired and you say you quit before, like on every TV show or movie ever. Well, you're fired. You can't fire me. I quit.
Yeah.
That was Baker.
That's basically what it was. So, and as far as Will Fuller, Kansas City would be fun, but
it's got to be Cleveland.
It's got to be
Cleveland or Kansas City. I mean, Cleveland's got to be the favorite, I think, and then Kansas City makes too much sense, so it won't happen. But it's hard for me to imagine him going anywhere besides those other two, or besides those two, I think. So,
unless Jacksonville gets nuts,
they certainly have gotten nuts in less exciting ways already this offseason. So.
Let's start with the ranking of these teams, and let's start with the Miami Dolphins after this trade. I know you've hit your points on this a little bit, but is there anything else you'd like to add to the Miami side of this?
No, I think I guess I would say the big thing for me is they are the most interesting situation to where I want to see where like the market settles on them. Mm-hmm. Starting with Tua, I think like I hate these situations. It's like what happened with Trubisky and like Daniel Jones and stuff. Like, I don't even really like Tua. It's not like I always say, like, it's not like I know him. He's not a family member. I don't have anything like I particularly care about Tua. And I agree with everyone that I'm not really sure that he's very good. But the market loves to bury people and particularly high draft picks, young players really, really fast. And so if the market is going to do that still to Tua, despite having what we perceive as at least a reasonably smart head coach, offensive line upgrades, which was their biggest issue. And that's why everybody loves to blame Tua for the like ADOT and like, oh, he only throws slants. And it is partially, of course, because he doesn't have the strongest arm ever. But it is also because they had the worst offensive line in the NFL by a lot. And so, and bad weapons. He's throwing to Mac Hollins and Durham Smythe. Like, come on, like, give me a break. So if the market is just going to be, basically not bumping up Tua, despite the fact that he has Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, like that offense is loaded, is absolutely loaded. And so I want to see where he settles in, right? If they go too crazy on him because of that, then I'm not going to be all that excited. And it's kind of the same thing for the weapons. If we're going to discount, like if everybody decides Tyreek is just going to be the down the field flyer and we're going to all of a sudden make Tyreek Hill a, third or fourth round pick, like, okay, like let me get in on that, or if we're going to bump Waddle down because Tyreek is there, same thing, right? Gesicki, are we going to be out on Gesicki because he has more target competition? Well, now I want to buy in. And so it's kind of like the 49ers last year, right? I like all of them. I like everybody, but I want to be smart about how I attack them kind of based on what the market is doing with them. But in general, from like an offense perspective, if I were to like rank them in here, it's definitely like excellent signing with only one or two concerns, where there's definitely concerns about Tua and there's concerns about, kind of how it's all going to come together, basically with Tua at the helm, with generally a run first offensive coordinator. But I mean, I don't know how you can really like throw shade on Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, and all that talent.
No, the only problem becomes in terms of fantasy and best ball is how expensive Hill and Waddle are going to be. I think you see Hill take a slight dip, but I just can't imagine people scrolling past the name Tyreek Hill too late in the second round. I think it's just ingrained in a person's head that like, oh my God, Tyreek Hill middle of the second is a steal, and he's just going to keep going off the board.
Mm-hmm.
Waddle, I don't know what the public sentiment is on Waddle enough. I know the DFS sentiment and like the guys that are us that are grinding this 12 months a year love Waddle, but I wonder what that public sentiment's going to be after this trade. Are they going to be really out on Waddle, and are we just going to get him at a steal? And if I'm in a draft with 11 other people in August that are like scared to death to take this guy because no one likes Tua, because Tyreek Hill's there, am I going to get Waddle in the 4th round in like some of these drafts? Like, because that would be great. We're not going to get it right away, right? But by the end of the summer, he might be dropping. So I love it. I don't personally like dislike Tua. He's just meh. He's just like fine. He can get the job done. He's not the worst. He's not my number one pick for a quarterback ever.
Yep.
But I think that the moves are fine. I think when I first saw the trade, I was like, this is stupid for both teams. And after thinking on it for 30 minutes or so, I'm like, all right, well, they kind of got, because I will get to them, but I kind of got the same vibes as the Raiders, and it makes sense because it's 2 number 1 wide receivers. And after thinking through it, I'm like, all right, well, it makes sense for the Dolphins because the AFC is pretty stacked, but the AFC East is winnable. I heard you talk earlier about like if Josh Allen goes down for 2 months, then Miami should theoretically run this division.
Yep.
Theoretically, they're still Miami, just like we're going to talk about another team in a little bit that's still themselves. I think excellent signing with only 1 or 2 concerns is definitely the right spot. I should probably click on the right screen to do this. We're going to drop them. So let's talk about Kansas City, because I think this is the other team that we're going to spend some time on, and some of these we can get through a little bit quicker.
Kansas City, you go first.
I'll just say it. I mean, it's bad. They brought in Juju. They lose what makes this offense phenomenal, the way that they could take the top off of it. Mecole Hardman clearly isn't it. We've established that over the last 17 years, that he's just never going to be Tyreek Hill or even a shadow of Tyreek Hill. He's just not that guy. Juju's not that guy. Travis Kelce is 47 years old. So what are they going to do? They're going to probably have to run 2 tight end sets. They're in the toughest division in football, and they might be the worst team of the 4. They have the best quarterback, but every team in this division has a great to good quarterback.
Yep.
Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert. The worst you would say is Derek Carr, who we've established is fine. Like, clearly he's not Patrick Mahomes, but you put an offense around Derek Carr and you don't put an offense around Patrick Mahomes, the Raiders could be a better overall football team. So I think it's a massive step back for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I really have to sit back and think of what I'm going to do with this team going forward. I don't want Mahomes as early as you're going to have to take him, in my thought. Kelce, do we want him in the first round still? Oh, I mean, that's a tough call. What are we doing with Juju? I mean, the only guy that makes sense right now, and, don't shut the stream off, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the only guy that makes sense on this team at the moment to take. And that's only if they don't sign somebody or draft a high running back, because they're dumb and they'll do something like that. But they have no other running backs on the roster at the moment, so they got to bring somebody in. It's just what caliber of running back are they going to bring in? And if they don't bring anyone in to share time like significantly, Edwards-Helaire is the best guy to take on this team, and it's like the grossest thing I've had to say all off season.
I know, and we well, at least I have said a lot of gross things, but I mostly agree with pretty much everything that you said. I think obviously, just like with any running back, right? Like you mentioned Gibson earlier, in a matter of an hour, we were like, oh my God, it's wheels, or, it's a day basically, but it felt like an hour given this offseason. Antonio Gibson went from holy shit, this is it. Finally, the upside is now there to the upside is technically still there, but you're going to basically need a JD McKissic injury for the upset or the upside to come through for Gibson. The same thing is now in place with CEH. If it remains the same and they take their resources that they have now and invest in wide receiver, which they need to, and defense, which they also very much need to, and just sign some Joe Schmo off the street that's not Darrell Williams or Jerick McKinnon. I do want to put that caveat in there. If it's one of the guys that they had last year that they clearly showed an affinity to use, if it's some random, the report today was they're interested in Rojo, right? And so I'm not really all that worried about Rojo for CEH, not because Rojo can't steal work, but because that just makes CEH the passing down back, which is that's what you need. You need him to be the passing down back and get enough work in the run game. I really don't give a shit if Rojo gets 10 carries in between the 20s, So
yeah.
Anyway, CEH right now I think has the cleanest path to being the smash for the Chiefs. I do like Juju probably a little bit more.
Does it make you sick saying that? Because it made me sick saying
CEH or Juju.
Saying CEH is the clearest path for success in Kansas City.
Yeah, 6 hours ago. I probably would have thrown up at my desk sitting here saying that. And now here we are. I just can't do the Kelsey thing at where I think he's going to cost, not because I'm not projecting him to smash. He should, the target share should be the highest he's probably ever had, because those outside guys and Juju are just not going to command the level of targets that Tyreek did. But we're just talking about an old, aging, likely declining tight end that I just don't want to bet on a tight end in the first round. If he was 27, sure, let's do it. You know what I mean? 100%. But I just don't, as of right now, right, we're a few hours removed from this. I don't think I can do, at least not a lot. I'm not going to say I'm going to have 0% Kelsey when we get to the summer, but he's not going to be a super priority, I don't think, for me. I do like Juju. I think this is going to set up fairly well for Juju, because Tyreek did get quite a few underneath targets. They made a pretty big shift to kind of dinking and dunking on offense when teams just literally took away the deep ball from them. And Tyreek was a huge benefactor of that. Why did Byron Pringle start to excel down the stretch? Because they needed somebody to just work some intermediate stuff when they took away the deep ball. And so I think Juju can be okay. What I think the real winner is going to be for the Chiefs is whoever the hell comes in here.
Yeah, because they got to bring someone in.
I don't really give a shit who the name is, honestly. I think one of these rookies, I'm really fucking rooting for Jameson Williams so bad. Absolutely. I need a win. Darrington Evans got cut. Antonio Gibson's ceiling, it was the Lucy with the football in 24 hours. I just give me Jameson Williams on the Chiefs, please, for the love of God. But whoever it is, really, I imagine they'll bring in multiple rookies and probably multiple free agents, and we'll kind of dissect those when they happen. But those are the winners. If we were gonna lump it into here somewhere, it's probably don't really understand these moves but could work type of thing. Because honestly, if it's Will Fuller and Jameson Williams and George Pickens, and whoever else, MVS, they bring in a bunch of talent. Obviously that's not Tyreek Hill, but they could still be a really freaking good, really, really, really good offense. And you have a lot more and cheaper parts to make that happen with. So they're pretty interesting. Obviously, from the don't really understand, I do understand from a long-term franchise,
right? Well,
why they did what they did, but for us, it's painful for sure.
Well, I guess we understand it, but I kind of don't understand it at the same time because the whole point that you were bringing up earlier today was it might have been Davis bringing it up. They have like a 12-year window with Mahomes, and that's great. Like, yes, that's great. So yeah, at some point you think you gotta burn it down and rebuild it. But why are we doing that when he's 26, 27 years old? Why shouldn't we be pushing it at that point? Are you scared of the division? I would just be looking to do everything I could to keep a guy like so usually you want to trade a guy a year early rather than a year late. I'd rather hold on to Tyreek for the year late just because of what that guy can do on the football field and compared to everybody else. And once he is done, he's done. And yeah, maybe you don't have value anymore, but he was the perfect complement for Mahomes. Like there's not another guy. There might not be another guy to come along in the next 7 years in the entire league that is a compliment to Mahomes as Hill was. And even if one does, you have to be lucky enough to be the one of 32 teams to get them. Yep. So, I mean, so for me, I'll end it with this. I get an overall sense of it feels bad in Kansas City this year. It just feels like it's going to be bad. And you mix that with the overdrafting of them because they're going to be so high, and rightfully so. You see the name Patrick Mahomes. You want to draft Patrick Mahomes. Everybody wants to draft Patrick Mahomes, but now it feels like it's going to be gross.
Yep.
So
I do agree. I do agree with this. There is a lot of wide receiver depth, so that's good for them. They got a ton of picks, and so hopefully that could be good for us. Is if they draft 2 or 3 of these guys.
It's not their only need, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, their defense stinks. Their defense,
defense is awful.
It got better, but they lost a lot. Well, because this is what happens when you have an expensive quarterback, an expensive tight end. You drafted a running back in the first round, and this is what happens.
Exactly. So our next team is, I guess your new favorite team, the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh Jesus!
Since you're really big on Mariota, from what you've been saying over the last, I don't know, forever, I guess. What are your thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons? I can't even say it with a straight face.
Well, so I'm gonna probably contradict myself in this, and I guess I am technically kind of meaning to, because where I'm gonna rank them is not gonna align with what I'm initially gonna say. And my initial thought is that I think my Mariota take is just that I think he's better than probably people think. I think he has always been a starting NFL caliber quarterback. But what happens in the NFL is that if you're not an above average or great NFL quarterback, when like your time is up in your current stop, sometimes the NFL just like gets sick of you. Like Teddy Bridgewater is an NFL starting quarterback. Like we're starting Taylor Heineke, I can throw the football further than Cam Newton can, and he keeps getting jobs every year, right? Sam Darnold, what are we doing? Like these guys continue to get jobs because they just, for whatever, Cam can run, so I guess that's it. But like these guys just haven't happened to have worn out their welcome yet. Mariota did, and so he couldn't get a job that year when he went on the market, right? When he was done with the Titans. And so then he has to settle for this backup job, and he never gets a shot to prove himself. Now the cycle comes through where everybody finally realizes all these bums that we've been trying out are terrible, and we can try out the Mariotas of the world, right? The Trubiskys of the world. They're not good, like truly good NFL caliber quarterbacks. It's just that the public perception, because they're not great, just like buries them. And then every Sunday we show up and we watch like XFL caliber quarterbacks out there. Like literally, Philip Walker was in the XFL and was playing games for the Panthers. And so that's like my general Mariota take. But this team is, oh my God, a disaster. That I don't even know how they're going to fill out like the skill position groups. I mean, they brought CPAT back and they have Pitts. But the current wide receiver one is Olamide Zaccheaus, which is a hilarious thing. You talk about the CEH thing where we're like, did that make you sick to say that? Like the wide receiver one, I mean, he was barely the wide receiver one at Virginia. So that tells you everything you need to know. But they're obviously going to bring some people in. but like Mariota is not like some elevator of talent around him. The offensive line's not going to get really upgraded because they don't have any money. I'm not sure that the coach proved anything to us last year. I know he was great in Tennessee, but I'm not sure Arthur Smith is like some revolutionary offensive mind.
Right.
He's going to want to still run Mike Davis and CPAT, and I'm not sure that they're going to really produce very much. And so I'll still, because I can't help myself, draft some Kyle Pitts and maybe some CPAT or something. But what are we doing? I mean, what are we doing with it?
Before I hit on Atlanta, I just want to circle back to Miami for 2 seconds. The one take that I think people are forgetting to make, and I forgot to make it earlier, is their third wide receiver is Cedric Wilson now. They brought him in from Dallas. And I know people are bringing up Devante Parker, but I think that clearly shows that they are going to be moving on from Devante Parker at some point this year in some form or fashion. So
somebody needs him. They can trade him for a late pick or something.
I think you're going to see him end up somewhere, but maybe Atlanta, because God knows they need him. They need at least 3 of them. What are we doing here? So my only pushback on you is I'm out on Kyle Pitts now. I'm out on Atlanta. I think I told you in the beginning of the year, there's teams that I'm going to look at and I'm going to be like, I'm not drafting anyone from this team at all. Like I'm just going to throw an X over that team. And I can't see Atlanta moving the ball enough. I know that the one funnel is going to be Kyle Pitts theoretically, but how good is that going to be? We've seen teams that just do nothing offensively and they're fantasy irrelevant, even with a good player on the team. So I feel bad for Kyle Pitts, and this isn't all Atlanta's fault. This Calvin Ridley stuff really killed them, whether they were going to trade him or not, because they could have got something to help replace him. It's just, to me, it's just Atlanta is just boom, off the board. A lot of this NFC South is off the board, because I'm not taking anyone from the New Orleans Saints either. So at the moment,
I don't really have a big counter to Pitts. It's just I'm not going to full fade that talent, even though I literally agree with everything that you just said about the Falcons. But like last year, I was trying to make it a bit of a point to get over the field on Kyle Pitts and make sure he was in like my top 5 tight ends. I'm probably not going to do that this year, but I'm not going to have 0. Maybe I match the field, or I'm a little bit under, or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be really limited for me. It's going to have to be him dropping significantly.
I do think he might drop. The sentiment seems pretty down on, obviously the Falcons in general. So it'll be interesting to see. Real quick, I wanted to hit Jameson's point here. He says, what's the difference between KC and Buffalo, really? What I would say to that is that KC's offensive identity, obviously is Mahomes, but Tyreek would be the 1B to that in terms of everything about the KC offense and what they've been for several years now is largely because of Tyreek Hill. I know Mahomes is amazing, but every defense gears up to stop Tyreek Hill. Everything about the KC offense is basically built through what Tyreek Hill can do with his explosiveness. And so you take that away, and at best you're filling it with Will Fuller and a rookie and an aging Travis Kelce. And I think Buffalo just has everything that they had last year and then some, right? Crowder and McKenzie are probably an upgrade over an aging Cole Beasley. Gabe Davis is a young potential, breakout wide receiver, and Stephon Diggs is still really good. So I'm not going to argue if you think it's close, but I think that would be underselling what Tyreek Hill did for the Chiefs.
I agree. I think it's so. I think Devante Adams is the best receiver in the league, probably, and I think Green Bay, and they're not going to, but to further your point, I think it would be easier for Green Bay to replace Devante Adams than it would be for Kansas City to replace Tyreek Hill, just in terms of what they mean to the offense and what they allow those offenses to do. Now, I'm not saying Green Bay is going to do it, because I don't think they're gonna, and we'll talk about it. But speaking of Devante Adams, let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. And for me, the night that trade went down, I posted a video about the Devante Adams, talking about how crazy this division was. Like, I'm wheels up on the Raiders, that I kind of got to sleep on it a little bit. And the sentiment is still there that I'd like to be wheels up on the Raiders. The problem is Devante Adams is still probably going to be a first rounder, maybe a second. Waller is still going to be probably that late second to mid third. And then we're talking about Hunter Renfrow is probably still going to be too expensive as well. So the only guy that's actually affordable is the quarterback. And Josh Jacobs is going to be mixed in there somewhere in the 6th round, 5th round.
Yep.
So theoretically, I like the offense a lot because we've established it. And for my Mariota point as well, Derek Carr, we've established, is like that last very solid quarterback, right? Like that's where,
like 12th in the NFL or something like that, right? Just good enough to really, when the pieces, like they have right now, when the pieces are right around him, he's that tier break of you can have an excellent offense with him.
And we never even heard a sniff of Mariota challenging him for that starting job.
No.
So that's why I think Atlanta's in trouble. But back to the Raiders, everything's there. They're just way too expensive. And so to get a good Raider stack, your equity that you're putting into it to get it, if you wanted to get like Adams, Waller, Carr, like, yeah, great, the quarterback's cheap, but you're wasting 2 out of your first 4 rounds at best to get this team. And I'm not saying I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be grabbing them when I can. And I love the offense and everything I said before, the division they're in. It makes it so that there should be a lot of shootouts with them.
Mm-hmm.
Everything lines up. I just don't know who of the 3. So when I say the 3, Adams, Waller, Renfrow, are we going to be fading any of these guys just because of the cost?
Yeah, I definitely haven't had enough time to really, truly digest this one because I'm pretty much on the same wavelength as you, where I don't have a negative thing to say about the offense. Even got a new Josh McDaniel is in there. That is, in my opinion, a great offensive mind. And you give him these weapons, good Lord. I mean, he should be able to carve up defenses. From a fantasy football perspective, the problem is when all 3 of these guys have smashed and earned this ADP and earned this respect, as they definitely have earned it. It's deserved. Mm-hmm. It's volume driven. And there's only one football.
Yeah.
And so, Josh McDaniels also has been able to run the ball and throw to his running backs, right? And again, there's only one football. And so it's one of those situations where, again, this is the lazy comparison I make all the time, but it's kind of like the 49ers of last year, probably at higher cumulative costs across the Raiders, where I believe in this offense. I believe in, like you said, the schedule, the division, everything. And so I don't want to be out really on any of these guys, but just because of the cost, none of them are going to be like guys I'm going crazy over, unless maybe the market does really dip Waller and Renfrow. I think I would prefer Renfrow a little bit at that point. But like I said, I haven't put a ton of thought into it, but it's that weird intersection of, I have nothing negative to say about the offense. I'm very excited about the offense as a whole. And so I want to invest, but how do I do it given the cost that they're all going to be at? And I don't really have a great answer.
The only other thing I could say about it is the one good thing is when you do decide to take Devante Adams or Waller, I guess, or Renfrow, but specifically the 2 expensive ones, you're probably stacking them just by default because of at the cost you're going to get Carr. So you'll probably more often than not just immediately have a stack with your second quarterback because you're like, all right, I got Waller here. Carr has fallen to me in the 12th round, 11th round, whatever he ends up at. And it's like, well, now he's my second quarterback behind Josh Allen or behind whoever, insert Joe Burrow. And you're more than happy with that. And you're like, my second quarterback stack is nasty. So yeah, I think that we just need to really see how that's going to shake out. But for me, it's just excellent signing. And my only 1 or 2 concern is the cost for what we're going to be paying for these guys. So I unless you want a rocket ship, nope,
I'm good with that. And as we're moving on to the next team. CS Nerd asks about you're okay with Locke led Seattle, and no, not really. We'll get to Seattle compared to Atlanta, and then what kind of offense do you envision the Raiders running? I'm not a total expert on the McDaniels scheme, but I would just look at what McDaniels has done.
So McDaniels has had training wheels on him the entire time he's in New England, to be honest. And if you ask New England fans, they don't particularly like Josh McDaniels too much. And I don't think it's his own fault. Mm-hmm. So I think you will still see a lot of stuff. I think it makes Josh Jacobs a better play. I think they're going to be checking down to him a little bit more, setting up screens a lot more for him. Don't be surprised if you see that. But I do think you're going to see some more downfield stuff than you would have seen in New England a lot of the time, just because it's going to be essential for where they're playing as opposed to the other thing. So I think they're going to be fine. Let's hit on Tampa.
Yeah, not a ton, I don't think. Those were the big ones, right? We basically just hit the KC, Miami, and Tampa were the huge change. I mean, massive changes that really need to be covered in depth. Tampa is really just a mid for me. I think obviously you bring back Brady and Evans and Godwin, and it looks like Gronk is coming back. He hasn't signed yet, right? But I saw a video.
No, he's coming back.
It's pretty much. I saw the video posted on Twitter. He was at the barber. Yeah, and he hasn't. That was a phenomenal video.
The most Gronk video of all time.
So good, good. If anybody hasn't seen that, just like Google or Rob Gronkowski barber or something like that. It's very good. But just keep on trucking with the Bucks. The one thing I'll say is Mike Evans seems like a pretty good target with Godwin coming off the injury, and then Fournette is. I'm going to be fascinated to see. I tweeted about this. Like, I want to see where Fournette ends up from an ADP perspective,
right?
Because obviously, nothing negative to say about his role in his fantasy production in this offense with the high value touches and everything that he gets. But there's a certain level where you're paying for a cost with no upside around his cost, and a lot of downside because he's just a little older, some miles on his body, and you need every drop of those touches. And if anything, if they do decide to work Keyshawn Vaughn in or something like that, I don't want to be buying the top necessarily on Fournette, but I don't really have anything negative to say about what I expect his role to be either. So they're just like kind of in the mid, just keep on trucking.
So I'm back to the excellent with them with Brady coming back, because they have those two wide receivers. They're getting Fournette, they're getting Gronk, but they're getting one of the guys that's going to be perfect for this offense, and that's Russell Gage, which feels nuts to say. But if there's, like other than like Jarvis Landry coming in, this is the guy that they need for this offense to just really help out Godwin and Evans. And you're going to have like 2 games where Gage catches 12 to 15 balls. Like, just book it. It's going to happen. So it's, for me, I'm excellent with them because now you can play this offense again. I was completely out on him because it was just Evans at one point. But now we're getting the whole band back together. The only concern is who they've lost on the offensive line. And they're going to put a ton of points up in the worst division, or one of the worst divisions of football. They're going to roll the Saints. They're going to roll the Panthers. They're going to roll the Falcons. That's for sure. So this team is going to put up points, and that's probably really good for Fournette. So,
excellence, totally fine. Yep, excellence, totally fine with me.
All right, do you want to hit on the Jaguars real quick?
Oh, God.
I mean,
what do you have a Jag? I don't even think I have a. It's one of the bottom two. I think it would have to be. Don't really understand these moves, but could work because that's the definition of that row. That's the definition of that row is the Jackson. It should just be called the Jacksonville Jaguars row, where like everybody else is like trading for Devante Adams and Tyreek Hill and paying those guys $30 million a year, and they're paying Christian Kirk, and it doesn't make a lot of sense what it felt like every once in a while, or maybe almost every year, one team gets really trigger happy at the very start of free agency and just starts spending on these like mediocre players. And that shit just never fucking works. I can't remember a time when the team that went crazy. I mean, look at your Patriots last year. I didn't even like really hate necessarily Hunter Henry or Jonnu or whatever. Aguilar was pretty bad, but like I didn't even really hate those signings specifically, but they just came out guns blazing into free agency. And there's always things that happen to where you could probably get similar players or even better players at better values. And so that's what the Jaguars did. So I didn't really understand it. However, they are upgrades. Pretty much all the moves they made are upgrades, and it's a former number 1 overall pick and Urban Meyer's out of there. So it could work, but
the Urban Meyer stuff is stupid, but I think it was getting overblown. Like a lot of that stuff sounded like bad jokes that he was making. Like like who's that number 99 on the Rams? Like, come on, dude. We know that Urban Meyer knows who Aaron Donald is. Like, and everyone on Twitter is acting like, can you believe that Urban Meyer didn't know who Aaron Donald was? Like, come on. We're not dumb. He was making bad jokes. He's a disgusting human being, but like he's not a big idiot. The Jaguars, I think what they were doing is they really want to know what they have with Lawrence. Like they just really, really want to know if he is their guy. So they did what they had to do to get what they considered weapons around him. So they were like, we want Christian Kirk. The only way he's coming here is if we overpay him. Otherwise, he's going to sign anywhere else. And that's what they were doing. They're like, all right, we can get Evan Ingram. He should be okay. So I don't really understand these moves, but could work. I get like that's where I have them as well. But I can see what they're trying to do. They're just trying to see. They're not in win now with a rookie quarterback. They're in do we have our quarterback mode? And then they're going to work from there. So the Chargers are mid for me, to be honest with you. Until today's trade, I was going to say that I think the surprise in the AFC West is the Chargers might be the worst team in the division until this Chiefs thing. And now I got to rethink it a little, but I still think it's a possibility. Keenan Allen's coming in at 30 years old, I think. I think Mike Williams is turning 28 this year, which is, fine. Eckler is still, the offense should be good. I'm not saying the offense shouldn't be good. They brought in all these high-profile defensive players. It doesn't always work. Just like bringing in a new wide receiver doesn't always work. Like you just can't bring in names and expect it to work properly. And the Chargers have been the Chargers. They find ways to lose football games. Just always have. It's just doesn't matter who the head coach, quarterback, GM is. It's one of those weird things where just it's like you're in the Matrix and you're just constantly doing the same thing no matter if the pieces change. So for me, I think they're mid. They're still a team that I'm not avoiding or anything. I still like the Chargers, but I won't be shocked if they're last in their division and not as good as everyone thinks they are.
Yeah, I kind of wish they would have actually dumped some of the resources into the offense. I know that sounds crazy because their defense is terrible last year or whatever, but I tend to agree with you when you start to bring in a particularly older, aging, former like Khalil Mack is kind of a former superstar defensive player. He hasn't been a superstar of late. I know he's been hurt and stuff, but that doesn't work a lot of the times. Look at even like the Dolphins did it. Right. They signed all these DBs and sometimes it just doesn't work out. And maybe they're not a scheme fit. Maybe they're getting older and the skills are declining. A lot of the times you see these teams that like build that, like, look at I guess this is kind of cliche, but look at the Legion of Boom with Seattle. Like there's just all home guys. You might add in a piece here or there to kind of take you over the top. Right. That's like what the Rams did. Right. They just brought in Jalen Ramsey. Like Donald created their defense and some super cheap, actually, homegrown defensive guys. Then you go get Ramsey, takes you over the top. And then they were able to piecemeal things there after Ramsey with some free agents and stuff. But that's once you've established that foundation. Starting a whole new defense through free agency seems like it might work, but a lot of the times it just doesn't. So I kind of wish they would have split the middle a little bit, grab a couple of defensive impact guys. If you wanted Mac, that's fine. But go get that third wide receiver.
That third wide receiver, man. If they got that third wide receiver, we would be like this. I'd be as excited as everyone else is about them. Probably
go get that tight end. They
Yep.
they Gerald Everett. Like, we're gonna do this whole Gerald Everett thing. I mean, he dropped like 6 touchdowns last year. He actually could have smashed last year if he could catch. The Rams let him go. So I just
wish trade for Noah Fant. Try to get Fant now that he's in Seattle. Like, do something.
They could have taken the strength and made it. They could have been the best offense in the NFL. Is basically what I'm saying, and they banked on what they had last year offensively, but everybody else got better. And so, mid, but just from an NFL perspective, it was a little disappointing, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm still going to be drafting Chargers. It's just,
yeah.
Green Bay. Oh my God, the Green Bay Packers.
Can we put them in the bottom? Can we please put them in the bottom?
Yeah, but
it's not because of what they actually did this year. They've backed this. They're paying the piper for everything they've done for the last however many years. Not being and getting Aaron Rodgers to come back, but losing Devante Adams. Like, what the fuck is the point?
I don't understand.
Just let Rodgers
I
go.
literally don't understand.
If Adams is gone, what is the point of having Rodgers? And it probably would have been vice versa too. If you traded Rodgers, just let Devante go too.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you would split the middle. So yeah,
I literally don't understand what this team's doing at all. We're talking about how teams are getting smarter, and this is like the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. To be completely honest, I don't. Is it because they don't have an actual owner to to have to look at in the eye? I mean, it's a lot easier to look at a room of 12 people than it is to look at one guy in the eye and be like, yeah, I'm going to sign Rodgers, but he's going to be throwing to the ball boy for the entire season because we ain't got anybody. Yeah, they got Lazard. They didn't even bring MVS back. He's sitting in Kansas City right now, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know why okay. I know why Rodgers came back because he got paid. He got some big money, and that's why he's back. But other than that, dude, what are we doing? What are we doing for the Green Bay Packers? Oh, my God. So, yeah, unless you have something else to add to that mini rant.
No, I think people might turn this into bullish on Aaron Jones' situation. And like from a volume perspective, I certainly can understand that angle. But I think my take is I'm going to be pretty skittish on this offense in general.
Yeah,
obviously, we have them in the what are we doing? And banking on a bunch of 3-yard catches from Aaron Jones on an offense led by Alan Lazard and Joseph DeGuara or whatever his name is. Like, I don't know that I want to be paying peak price for that. I don't know that he's winning you fantasy leagues. Basically,
I loved getting Aaron Jones in the 4th round like a week ago.
Yep.
And now I'm looking back and I'm like, God, what a mistake that's going to end up being.
I agree with this on the Chargers. So the Chargers are not dead yet. The draft is coming. They can add one of these rookies. It was just a little, I feel like if they didn't want to get the receiver, if they felt good about Palmer and maybe drafting somebody, I wish they would have done the tight end thing. And I know that, that's easier said than done, but it's just, I'm being picky, but I just feel like with all that cap space, they were set up to like take the league by storm this year. And I feel so about that now.
Yeah. Let's hit on the Browns. That's the other big one we have to hit on. Go ahead.
I don't really want to talk about them very much. I would, from a real life football perspective, obviously I understand making an upgrade to one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I also honestly understand doing the Amari thing, but from my heart, really just says, what do we do? What are we doing? And I'm not really going to talk about it too much other than the statement that they put out was one of the most bullshit, the 2 memes would be like, you just said a lot of words without saying anything.
Yep.
Or what's the one where the guy sent the DM that's like, I'm not reading all that, but I'm happy for you, or sad that happened to you.
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Like that's how I felt about that statement from their organization. So I don't know. I'm not really too interested in talking a lot about them and definitely not interested in talking about about Watson. I get he's good at football, but I feel like and honestly, Amari Cooper is not the old Amari Cooper, and honestly, like he got the nickname Average Amari for a reason. He's gotten a lot of hype without ever really doing anything to earn it, and now he's aging and older. I mean, I guess maybe they'll bring in Fuller, and then that'll make the offense more exciting. But I think there might be a little more hype than substance with them, even though obviously they'll be good. I think, but I think it's just a big change, and people are going to want to be excited. But I'm not sure that they're at the top of the AFC with some of these other teams.
Yeah, and just trying to keep this strictly football, which is really hard to do with this situation. We saw the way the contract was structured, where that whole nonsense, which tells you that Watson and Cleveland are expecting him to be
suspended.
Not even just suspended. I would say suspended for a significant amount of time. Like it's probably going to be 8 games, which is significant just in terms of fantasy. I'm trying to stay away from everything else. So now you're talking about Jacoby Brissett playing in that offense for 8 weeks, probably, maybe. And he's throwing to Average Amari, like you said. They're going to be run first already. And Brissett he's never been a fantasy quarterback. So I'm kind of out on everything but the Browns running game at the moment until we know more, I would say. So we'll just throw them in the mid category.
Yep.
But that's where I am with them. It's like, oh, we don't have. I want we Seattle, see Dallas thing in this. They only signed 2 players from what I've read so far, which is 2 defensive players. Lost Amari, they lost Cedric Wilson. They're just losing everybody. So I don't know what Dallas is doing. Indy, what are your thoughts on Indy with Matt Ryan? I think that's an interesting one.
That is an interesting one. I think he's not at this point in his career maybe as good as Phillip Rivers was in his last year with Indianapolis, but I think he's still competent enough, and he's a pretty good fit. I know, if you're a Colts fan, you're not going to be winning the Super Bowl or anything with Matt Ryan in the current state of that team, but in general, like in a vacuum, I kind of think Matt Ryan with Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman and Hines and my boy Kylan Granson and what will assuredly be some kind of additional wide receiver upgrade, I would think, in the draft. I kind of like it. I would put it in the mid because I cannot call Matt Ryan excellent, but I think
that's fair
compared to Wentz. I think it's closer to the Rivers season than the Wentz season. Basically, is what I would say, which was pretty good for fantasy. The Rivers season.
Well, I think he's better than what Rivers was that last year.
Okay.
Now Rivers is a gunslinger and he'll throw it downfield, so maybe fantasy wise a little bit better. But Matt Ryan is a sneaky gunslinger too. He'll throw the ball and he racks up the yards. And I think this is exactly what Pittman needed. I think this is massive for Pittman. So for me, that bumps him up. And because that bumps him up, I think it might make Taylor the clear 101 would be my thought. I mean, I could, it just seems like the offense is in a good spot. So for me, it's like, all right, well, now I know what I'm getting around Taylor. So I like him to edge out CMC a little bit. And we all know that CMC in the right situation is the better fantasy player. But right now, Jonathan Taylor's in the right situation for what he needs. So
yep.
I don't mind putting them in the mid, but I think
I kind of like excellent. I kind of like excellent the more that you've said it. And as you were talking, I was remembering a couple of tweets that I saw where we're really getting in the weeds, but somebody was mentioning like basically Matt Ryan with a clean pocket last year was like basically still same peak Matt Ryan. But the offensive line was terrible, the pocket would collapse quickly because nobody besides Kyle Pitts could get open, and the offense was just generally terrible, so it made him look worse. But in situations, situations that he'll be in a lot more in Indianapolis, behind an elite offensive line with a good offensive coach, with a good run game that should put him in, better down and distance, with hopefully better weapons. We'll see. But I think they could be sneaky good on offense, and it wasn't the sexy upgrade like all these other teams. So people aren't going to be like, oh yeah, now Michael Pittman is a smash. Whereas they're going to be like, oh, now Jerry Jeudy is a smash. And I agree, but what's the ADP gap? Like, Judy's going to shoot up 4 rounds. Is Pittman even going to move?
If he doesn't, I'm going to have a ton of Michael Pittman if he doesn't move at all, because I just think it's the perfect situation for him. I think I really, really like it. They're in the dome. Like, it just, everything checks the boxes for what I want with a Matt Ryan team. He gets his stud wide receiver. He gets a great running game for once in his life. Well, I guess Freeman was pretty good for him for a while.
He had a chain of hands, though.
But that's when they were really good too. So Matt Ryan really played well when he had that running game behind him. It just seems like the right place. And Granson might be the right tight end now. Like, I think it's great for that pick. The stability at quarterback it's huge. So other than that, we've got like 6 teams left. I don't know if there's any that we really have to hit on. Tennessee releasing Julio was interesting.
And Bobby Trees. And they got Bobby
Trees. Oh yeah, and they picked him up. What are your
which is just like
the same thing.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's not gonna, I don't think he moves the needle for me at all. That offense is just, it's just what it was.
Sucks for him.
I do like the Allen Robinson signing with the Rams. Yeah. I think that's great for them. They get to move on from Odell after the knee injury, which sounds, terrible, but it is what it is. And I think it's an upgrade over Woods and what they would get from OBJ this year. So now you get Cooper Kupp, who's old, by the way. I was looking up Cooper Kupp.
28 or 29.
I think he's going to be 30 this season, if I recall correctly.
Turns 29 in June.
Okay, so he turns 29 in June. Mm-hmm. So older than you would think, I guess. Are you worried about regression with Cooper Kupp at all?
Definitely worried about regression. I think he's still very much, it's kind of like the Tyreek thing. It's coming. It's coming. And so I don't really know. I don't have any form. There's no reason to believe that he is going to get worse next year, like as a real football player, based on what we just saw this year. I mean, that was one of the most incredible. I mean, he's just a stud.
Right.
But it is definitely going to be coming. One thing I do like about guys kind of like him, Devante, even like Nuke, those guys, even honestly like Keenan Allen is, Keenan's definitely, the regression has already started. But when route running is your thing, right? It's a little easier to sustain closer to top level production because you're just a tactician. You're not, of course you need a certain level of athleticism, but it's generally just like route running that these guys are getting open on. So, and my God, Kupp is an incredible route runner. So I think he buys himself a little bit more time there. But I was just going to say, I feel like we got to smash A-Rob early in the draft cycle because it's not even just like any real take on A-Rob, any real take on anything like that. But like, I just think the ceiling is absolutely outrageous because if Kupp regresses or if Kupp just takes a little bit less of the offense, right? Like Woods got hurt. Odell was a new free agent mid-year. Van Jefferson is not a target dominator. Neither is Higbee. If anything, like any form of the market share shifts from Cooper Kupp, and Allen Robinson was just, getting screwed over by the Bears for the last couple of years, and he's still Allen Robinson. I mean, the cost you're going to get him at in one of the best offenses in the NFL is like you're getting him at the cost. We're paying for these Broncos wide receivers. Why can't we pay for Allen Robinson? Like, he's proven to already have done it.
Right.
None of these guys have even done it yet.
And he's never had a quarterback like Stafford.
Yeah. So it could be over for him too. So
that's also true.
He's not without risk, but I just think the reward isn't. I'm more than happy to take that risk given the reward.
Yeah. Seattle's what are we doing? We don't even have to talk about them.
Yes, please. Yes.
Carolina is I'll put them in the mid just because they re-signed DJ Moore, which is smart.
Yeah.
And the
They
Steelers.
They could go get Malik Willis or something like that to where you would be like, okay, they didn't get the quarterback, but now we see why they were doing what they were doing.
Yeah. And the Steelers, I'm fine with it. Like I like to bust balls about Mitch Trubisky, but I like that offense as a whole. So if he's going to succeed anywhere, this is where he's going to succeed, and I think we're going to know quick. And they might even draft a quarterback and still be looking, making him fight for his job every week. So I like them as like an excellent signing, just because I think any quarterback that had a pulse was going to be an excellent signing for them, just because of everything they have around them.
And I think this is what a team like them should do. Again, I come off as this Trubisky stan, but it's just the right kind of bet to make. What risk is there in seeing if Nagy and the Bears were the problem on Mitch?
Right.
Like he was kind of like Josh Allen before Josh Allen, this kind of like unproven college prospect with all the tools. He can run, he can sling it, and he didn't pan out. But there's reason to believe it was the Bears. And the Bills coaching staff loved him.
Yeah.
Does that mean anything? I don't know. But it makes it a worthwhile bet for 1 year and no money. Like, who gives a shit about that? And you can still go draft your rookie this year. If, they may not be able to get Willis, we'll see. But, if they want Pickett or whatever, if they can still get their rookie and have Mitch. So I think it was a really smart move, even if it doesn't work.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% on board with you. My only pushback would be, we still saw what he did on the field, even if he was being, held back, and it never looked good. You never saw flashes. It felt like it was very few and far in between. But I think if he's going to succeed anywhere, it's with Pittsburgh this year. He has the absolute right setup. Yeah,
great weapons. And the only other thing I would just add is he's a great example of, if he does kind of take a leap this year, it's a perfect example of like growth is not linear. Everybody always thinks like, oh, look, this player looked better this year, so next year he's going to go like this.
Yeah,
that's not really how it works. It usually is just like, or you get Devante Adams was fucking horrible, and all of a sudden, he just figures it out. It doesn't always come together in this clear and easy path like we want it to be.
Another reason Green Bay is going to suck is because Aaron Rodgers doesn't trust anyone for 3 years, is what it seems like. So
who's he going to throw to?
So who is he going to throw to? And even if they get the best receiver in the draft, like I would be all out on them. Buffalo. I mean, I think cutting Beasley was smart. Re-signing Isaiah McKenzie was good. Oh my God, who else did they add? They added
Crowder.
They added Crowder, which I think makes McKenzie a little tough to draft now, because that was the McKenzie role. So that's Buffalo telling you that they don't fully believe in McKenzie. And so if the team doesn't believe in him, why should I? Is my only thought on that.
I think the one positive for fantasy is just, they do have they have very few holes on their entire roster, including their defense. So it just makes sense for them, especially with an aging Stephon Diggs, cutting Cole Beasley, to just build up some depth at wide receiver. And honestly, I wouldn't want to go into the season with no backup plan to Isaiah McKenzie in the slot either. It costs, it's not even $4 million like guaranteed, right? For Crowder, it's a $4 million contract, but that has a lot of incentives on it. So it was like nothing.
He could be one of those veteran cuts that happens every year where you're like, oh, he's gone after, the middle of training camp because McKenzie just outworked him, and then just like, well, we'll get rid of him before that week 1 veteran move. And if he's still available and McKenzie gets hurt, we'll just resign him. Yeah. So
I just think it was I think it was just a smart move that doesn't move the needle a ton. But I mean, I'm interested in both him and McKenzie still. I think McKenzie's really going to tank in value because of that. And now he's going to go to being, a 19th or 20th round pick or something. The guys in the chat might correct me that I'm way wrong on that, because I haven't drafted in a little bit. But I think he's going to be late regardless. And it's just like, the fourth wide receiver, even if he is the fourth wide receiver on the Bills. Look what he did. He was like winning people fantasy leagues. He lost me. I was in the semifinals of the big dog last year, and I lost second by like less than a point to a team with Isaiah McKenzie, because that was when he had his monster, 30-something point fantasy game, because he's good. And so what if most of your late round picks aren't going to hit anyway? Draft the guy on the Bills, and they paid him a little bit of money, so it's not the end of the world that Crowder's there.
The only other thing I want to hit on with the Bills is Devin Singletary. Oh, yeah. I think what they've proven by trying to get JD McKissic is that they do not want to use him the way they had to use him at the end of the year last year. And that's fair. I don't think they should be trying to workhorse Devin Singletary to death, and over the course of upwards of 20, 21 games that they're going to have to play for the year. So I still like Singletary and I'll still be drafting him, but we know that they're probably going to be looking to get him a compliment in the draft this year, someone that will play next to him. Because Zach Moss is either already gone or they're getting rid of him. It's just a fact. There's no way he's on this team next year. I would be shocked.
That was the biggest sign for me, even more than Singletary, was that if they really wanted to go get McKissic, they must not really love Zach Moss too much anymore. So I was actually drafting a little bit of Zach Moss, super early offseason drafts, just to kind of see how it went. If they didn't bring anybody in, who knows? Maybe he gets some of that work, but I definitely don't feel very confident in him. And then Singletary, it's like, I still think he's going to make for a pretty good pick around where he's going to go, because I definitely think, this hurts him. Losing some of that likely passing game role definitely hurts him. But we also have seen what can happen when he gets the full role. And he's an absolute smash. I mean, he completely destroyed down the stretch. So it's kind of like, it's now a little bit more of a contingent bet, kind of like almost like what the 49ers were last year, where we were drafting Mostert and Sermon, just like, we'll kind of see how this plays out. Because another guy who's dusted. But so I think it's like not great for Singletary, but as of right now, he's like not in a void for me or anything, just because of the ceiling.
Nice. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that. Like, it's the part of the Bills that I found interesting, because we weren't hitting on a lot of running backs as we went through this list, because nothing really changed, I would say, on most of them. So we didn't really have to. So I think we put them in the excellent signing, because they didn't have to do much. There wasn't like a splash play that they had to make. So that's our list for this. So we rocket shipped only one team, which is Denver, which one of our first shows, we said once they sign the quarterback, we're sending them to the moon. And we thought it might be Rodgers, but it ended up being Russell. And the only other thing I want to hit on Denver with before we get out of here is everyone's like, maybe Russell Wilson took a step back. I'm going to go on record and say, I think this is going to be his best statistical year that he's ever had, based on where he is, the offense that he could potentially run with the weapons that he has, and the shootouts that he's going to have to get into. So I'm just going to say it now. This is going to be Russell Wilson's best statistical fantasy, however you want to break it down. I'm not saying he's going to win a Super Bowl again, but just from a personal standpoint, he's going to have his best year.
I support it. I love to fuck around and joke around about a ton of bullshit, but also part of me believes a little bit in the narrative-y type stuff. And like the Rodgers fuck you campaign to the Packers 2 years ago when he threw 50 touchdowns.
Yeah.
If you watched those games, like if you're grinding DFS and you ever faded Devante Adams in a week, you knew they would get to the one. Rodgers would call 3 pass plays. He did not give a shit. It was like he and now I'm not putting Russ in the Rodgers category of human being, but I think everybody, when you're at that level of a competitor to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and you kind of probably feel burned, like the Seahawks have pretty much burned the prime of Russell Wilson's career by fucking around with Pete Carroll. I feel like he's going to want to come out and light it up too. And so,
And I don't think
Totally
he would
in.
to a situation where they weren't going to unleash the the sandbags on his legs and
Yep.
let him do what he wants to do. So I just think he's going to, barring injury, which we could say about every player, he's just going to go absolutely nuclear this year. So
Totally agree.
he's one of the guys that I'm going to probably be targeting a ton in the regular drafts. These super flexes are getting pretty crazy, to be honest. So that's our list. I don't want to go over all 32. I'm sorry, podcast
No.
listeners. But do we want to announce what we're doing Friday?
Yeah, I can do it. So I will pump tomorrow an episode of Best Ball Bros. If you have not watched before, I think this is the 4th or 5th episode, maybe the 5th episode of a series we're doing on here on Spike Week. Bringing in just different people from around the industry. I've done one with Rob, done one with Peter Overzet, both the winners of the $1 million tournaments this year. I got people scheduled for the next several weeks, and we just kind of talk best ball, get to know these people a little bit more of a relaxed setting instead of just, not 100% grinding football content year round. So you can get to know some of these people. And I'm bringing Davis Maddock, who is always a fun and polarizing personality in the industry. So I'm excited to do that with Davis tomorrow. And then Friday, Rob is coming back with me. Fridays, we're getting back into drafting now that I made it through the first weekend of March Madness. And we're going to do a bit of a crazy exercise. So there are 4 different sports available in the Underdog lobby to draft. NBA playoff, NHL playoff, MLB regular season, and obviously NFL Superflex. We are going to draft all 4 of those simultaneously on stream. And I have no idea how that's going to go. I don't know a goddamn thing about NHL. So
just draft the Bruins, bro. You just draft all Boston Bruins.
We're gonna draft Blues and Bruins because those are the only players that you and I know. And I'm honestly not a total baseball expert either, but it's gonna be fun. So if you're around on Friday, somewhere around this similar time, late afternoon, early evening on Friday, we will do that stream, and I'm excited for that one.
I drafted one baseball team, and our baseball expert said that I did a good job. So you know what? and I responded with, "Well, that's great because I don't know any of these players." So that's nice to hear.
That's how I feel. I go in there and I get scared to post teams because, like, I do know, a little bit about baseball. I grind DFS and stuff pretty hard, but like these guys know so much more than I do. So like, I'm like, did I fuck this up? Am I missing something or whatever? I've been grinding football and all these other sports. Please tell me I didn't miss something. So
I'm not concerned about football or basketball. Those other 2 are going to be, all right.
It's going to be tough, but it's going to be fun. And so, be ready for that on Friday.
Yep. Other than that, that's going to do it for this week's Spike Week football show. Hope you guys had a blast, and we will talk to you next week.